Hello, everyone. We are on the Sales Operator series, and I am joined today by a longtime friend. I have not spoken with you recently, but Steve Richard, welcome to the SOS. How are you?
Brian, it was nice seeing you invite me to come do this. Good talking with you. Yeah, and
Yeah,
everyone, we're catching up in real time here, so this is good.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, we used to see each other, I feel like, on the conference circuit regularly. I have not seen you on the conference circuit recently, but I do get to see you have a great content series on LinkedIn where you're just outside doing stuff all the time. You're doing like physical fitness stuff in all kinds of different locations.
Yeah, it started because when I was running, my old marketer, she quit, and the new marketer came in. And she goes, "Well, you have to be yourself on LinkedIn now. You don't have to send anybody else to do it for you." So I think about sales when I go for a run in the morning. I know that's
Totally.
pathetic, but then
As one
whatever
does.
was on my mind. Yeah.
You find a spot and then you're recording it. The stuff is great. I will say, I just want to compliment you. Like, I've been like, it is, it is the thing that not enough people are doing on LinkedIn, which is like being authentic and just doing like a normal thing.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm not. I was going to try to like put Claude flows out there, but I'm like, I got to be true to who I am. That's just not who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's great to be seeing you out there. You mentioned the Claude Flows thing. Maybe that's a great place to start. Like, you are really, really, I feel like, in tune with the sales process, how to advance deals, how reps can, strategically move the needle on an opportunity. What do you think is true about the sales process today or now that was not true? I don't know, pick a time frame, 12 months ago, a year ago.
Yeah, there's just lots of noise about what people think they can do with AI and certain things, and we're going to find out what of that is true and what of that's not true. You're probably been hearing about deterministic versus non-deterministic and all these other things. This is just a massive, massive shift where we are learning as we go of what's working out there in the market. What I see in terms of how salespeople are using AI is, awesome. Like the meeting prep capability, the ability to analyze transcripts of calls and of what's going on, the ability to recommend next actions when they weren't thinking of it, the ability to guide them to internal resources they might not have thought of before, the ability to help them follow the sales process, the ability to help them build a business case. I mean, there's just so many things where AI is just incredibly helpful and assists along the way. And at the same time, it's not closing deals. So you better be really darn good in sales these days. It's funny. I just got off a call with a chief revenue officer, and he's got a team of reps, and I heard what his problem is. Is like, we can get the meetings with the lower down people in these hospital systems. We can't get the meeting with the ultimate C-level person who oversees learning. They don't have a chief learning officer, but he's like, somebody in the C-suite cares about that. And it was such a simple lesson I pulled from my past of like, well, are you talking to a champion or a friend? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, a champion has influence. They want you to win. They tell you information, but so does a friend. They do the same thing. The difference is the champion actually has influence over the other people in the economic buyer, and the friend wants to win, but they don't have influence over those people. So these kind of like timeless things in sales, Brian, I think what's going on is in everyone figuring out what to do with AI and how to use AI. And at the same time, all of our businesses under pressure because of AI. I feel like we've lost focus on like some of these just universal, undeniable truths and facts of selling. Whereas, like, am I talking to a champion or a friend?
Yeah.
Simple.
I mean, that's a great example because I have, and it could be, it could be a little bit of the echo chamber of us who've been in it for a while, but it seems like we're on one of those waves where like people are not, sorry, my dog's like barking in this room right now. People are like, have lost a lot of like I don't want to say this is different because it feels like this happened a couple years ago, but like, because we can automate lots of things, because we can streamline lots of things, what starts to stand out is how good are you at the relationship part? How good are you at the meeting the prospect or the person across the table, phone, Zoom, whatever? How good are you at meeting and reflecting like where they are? And like, if you're not good at it, it's like, you're toast because there's so much noise. There's so many alternatives. If you're good at it, sorry, it's a huge advantage right now because I think they also are like, someone please tell me what I need to know about, I have a problem. I'm looking for a solution. I'm looking for someone to trust, and trust is like harder to gain, but also much more valuable than it used to be. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Helping people understand how to create consensus around what are they trying to achieve for their business in the first place. You want to talk about a lost art. I mean, I'm taking vendor calls all the time. So, by the way, I'm not anti-AI. I'm not one of these like no AI people. To the contrary, we're actually running some tests and experiments with pure play SDR, AI SDR technologies right now. So, no results yet, but I've seen what they're been able to produce through the prompting within their platforms, and I'm like, wow. I mean, the quality of the messages, to use terminology that you probably remember from before. It's the 3x3 research, finding 3 points. The
Yep.
company contact department 3 minutes on it. You smile because they're going to put it on my tombstone. And then what I call a tub email, which stands for them, us, both. The quality of that is just remarkable. Really, really good. We're talking like 80 word emails that are super tight that if I cranked them out all day long as fast as I possibly could, I could probably get 50 out like that. And
Yeah.
obviously you can do it in an industrial scale. I just can't do. So I think there's a lot of things like that are out there. But I'll tell you what, when I was talking to the AI vendors to figure out which one I was going to test first, the selling experience, oh my God, it's just
They are
so
terrible
bad.
at selling.
Oh, they're horrible. I mean, like literally you're getting on these calls and like, where are you calling in from, Steve? I'm like, really? I mean, Arlington,
Yeah.
Virginia. It says it on my LinkedIn. Oh,
Yeah.
so you're into sailing? They're talking about stuff that's up behind me on the wall. And I'm like, what are we doing? I mean, if you're selling, peddling this new greatest AI thing, couldn't you have AI like prep you and brief you on how to construct a conversation with me that would land and build trust? To your point. To the contrary, I'm like, I can't wait to get off fast enough with them because they're like, oh, what? Tell me about your business. What business are you in? Are you serious?
It's
This is where
crazy.
we've gotten. So I feel like the pendulum, like to your point, you and I have known each other long enough that I think like selling was pretty good for a long time. And then it sort of swung pretty bad for a while when we were in like the super high velocity SaaS days. And then I feel
Yep.
like it did come back to some better selling, but now with the AI boom, it's whipsawing back into just bad sales.
Yeah, the pendulum thing, and like, I'm always really, this is maybe like I don't know. I don't consider myself an industry vet. I consider you like a real veteran of our space and of just sales expertise. But like, there were organizations, and I'm thinking about like the ADPs and some of these companies that just have like phenomenal sales process and phenomenal sales acumen. And it seems like we've had a whole generation, truly like a whole generation of sellers who've been like trained on filling in CRM feeds or fields, if that makes sense. And like everyone read Predictable Revenue. This came up the other day, and like what you're saying to me like harkens to that. It's like everyone read that book in 2000. I don't know. Pick a number, 10. I'm not sure when that came out. And then it was like we did that for 10 to 12 years, and every single part of the process was like, I'm going to ask you a leading question to extract an answer that needs to go into a field in Salesforce. And so like every single person is just bad at having conversations. And I feel even sometimes I feel like the buyers or the prospect in this case, like they're not even really giving you information because they're trying to duck the questions, if that makes sense. They're just like, both sides are like, there's no actual communication happening, no like real thing, until like what you just said of, your previous call where someone's like, here's our actual problem. Our actual problem is X. And no one even, I feel like we've lost some of the capability of like having descriptive conversations that a seller can go get to that problem. And then instead of being like, here's a feature, the feature is this thing, it's like, well, here's how we solve that. Here's how we solve that in a comprehensive way that's not just like, let me
Knowledge
give you
of some
this.
customer stories. I
Yeah,
mean, your rep should have 3 to 5 stories that they can tell. Your rep should have an understanding of the business value that whatever it is you're selling, your solution, your product, your service. What's the business value that it helps them achieve? And that's a business metric, not Well, the usage metrics, they have this
Right.
many clicks, this many, no, not usage metrics, but like if they use it, what will it achieve for the business? Increase revenue, decrease cost, decrease risk, those kinds of things. Tie it back to the stuff they care about. New product launch. We're trying to sell more of the new thing. We're trying to help improve margins and avoid discounting. Whatever those things are that are meaningful for the C-level folks in that business, it's having those conversations to connect those dots. We've got to get back to connecting the dots. Actually, on some level, and this is really sad, I had this thought come into my head. It was last week. I did one call that was particularly gratingly bad, and it was a solution that I was like ready to buy. I was like, just wow. I mean, to go back to trust. Like, I just didn't. Why would I want to ink a deal with them? It was cheap. It was AI. It's transactional,
Yeah.
right? But like, I'm sitting there and thinking to myself, if they had AI trained to have a consultative conversation with me, I actually think I would have converted. It was the first time, because I did a poll with my tip of the day. I do sometimes polls. A while back, I did a poll that said, would you rather buy from AI or would you rather buy from a person? And it was overwhelmingly person. It's like 91% person or something. That was maybe a year or two ago. If I did it now, I bet there's a lot of people that are like, actually, I wouldn't mind being able to have a conversation with AI that's going to be able to get into some of the depth of some of these things. So we better look out in sales. I used to go to these conferences like you, and we hear like, oh, sales positions are going to go away in the next 4 years. And we heard all these stats, and most of them have not come true. To the contrary, there are more sales roles open than ever before. But we better be real careful right now, because if we don't get our shit together, different story.
I totally agree with that. And I'm curious, because we've kind of hovered on this trust thing a lot. We've hovered on like are you able to get to the depth and kind of like, volley back and forth to the prospect and pull some of that value story out, share the customer stories. Like, what do you think is, if I'm a seller watching this or catching a clip of this on LinkedIn, like what's the thing where I could go adopt a strategy where you would say, here's a thing you could do today that would stand out from, I don't know, 50% of your peers that you could enact?
They don't know how to buy. So it'll be, they don't, the buyers don't know how to buy. So it'll be very common. And this is something we talk about when I still do my sales training programs from time to time, just kind of spotty here though. But we'll have this conversation about how many times in their career do they buy what you're selling? And usually the answer comes back 2 or 3, sometimes just 1. How many conversations do you have selling that thing that they're buying per week?
Hopefully
10,
lots.
15, hopefully lots. That's why ambition exists, right? So wait a minute. So what you're telling me is that like you have an understanding and a roadmap of what their peers are doing at other companies to actually buy. Because what ends up happening, it's the same story over and over again. When people, if you're doing feature selling, they kind of like, it's a real light discovery. Then they show off the thing. And then the person sitting there in the demo, and this was me too, is like, wow, boy, that's pretty good. I really like that. Great. So now you have this person that's like, yeah, it's pretty good. I really like that a lot. But in order for me to buy, that means I got to go convince a whole lot of other people at my company to have that kind of experience that I had. Corporate executive board in their research calls it the collective learning experience, and the challenger customer to create that collective learning experience. So as salespeople, you got to help them with how to buy. And that goes through a consultative set of questions of things like, how does your organization bring in a new vendor? Who gets involved? What did it look like last time? What gets prioritized where they say yes compared to the things that get deprioritized where the committee says no? What sorts of things does the buying committee or your CFO have to see in order to end up on the yes side and instead of being in the no bucket? And when you start getting into that level of conversation, you're just going to start stacking the deck in your favor. You're going to increase your probability. I think of it like, I was watching the World Series of Poker. I've watched that for a while, but they show the percentage on the bottom based on if it's like pre-flop, then the flop, the turn, and the river, and you see it change. I sort of see that in sales calls. And when you start having that conversation, your probability is just creeping its way up. It's just creeping its way up because now we can start to control more of those factors. So if you're a salesperson out there, help them buy. They don't know how to buy.
That is a great, I hate to say classic, but I see this in Ambition. I've seen it, in folks who've come through here before. Like, when you buy a bunch of stuff, to your point, they also, your sales team probably have not bought also. Like, so they're also on this kind of slight, even though they've helped Sherpa other people through the buying process, they don't ever buy stuff in most organizations as an account executive or inside sales rep, whatever.
Actually, Brian, you bring a really good point, and maybe that's something that all of us should do a better job of. Let a salesperson be a fly on the wall when you're trying to make a decision to purchase from a vendor. That's a great idea. I don't know of I don't know a single company that ever does that, but boy, I'll tell you what, when you're on the other side of the table and you see the conversations that happen internally around that, like you guys, it looks like you went with this Riverside.com podcast platform, right?
Yep.
So I'm guessing that you probably had to have a discussion with some of your colleagues, maybe Jared or others, about this thing and make a case for it, right?
That's right. No, we have a great go-to-market engineer named Ryan who does RevOps, and I've handed so much stuff off to him over the past few quarters of like, are we going to renew XYZ tool? Are we going to look for a different tool? Blah, blah, blah. And, he has become super impactful to our go-to-market motion on the sales side and even on the marketing side, because he's dealing with all of these vendors who sell us pieces of parts of technology that are like, they suck. They suck at talking through the story, understanding how they should be better at companies. Another part of that, and I know I have a feeling that you have some, strong or at least really, really informed opinions, is like the way we talk about training and the way we talk about enabling sellers has changed a bunch, to the extent where like, I think some people are like, oh, it's just automatically going to happen. And what strikes me is that clearly it's not happening well because our experience with sellers is not very good. Do you think that all of these changes mean that not just like, oh, cool, here's a easy way to practice or be informed about content, but like the structure and the how we do training and how we hold people accountable to it, does that have to change? Like, do we have to figure that out?
The accountability outside of just-in-time enablement. So you get them the enablement in the right place at the right time that's aligned with them doing their job is the only thing that really is working from what I can tell. The forgetting curve kicks in real bad after your onboarding experience. You can onboard and certify all day long. It's just tough because a lot of that is lost until they can actually apply the knowledge in real time. And then you end up, I just onboarded a bunch of people, so I saw this myself. And then you end up in a situation, you have to just be prepared for it, that you will be retraining or coaching on the same material and content again when they actually have to use it in their job. I think that the old term for it was adaptive reasoning. Can you actually use it in context? So that is always going to be a problem, but that's way worse now than it was before, in my opinion. Because when you had people that were sort of in the office in real time together, there was a lot more of the kind of just lean over and ask your buddy sort of thing. And then you would try to get the information you need. The other thing that we're also seeing is the content, all the enablement and learning and training content sitting in a repository. What AI has done for that is completely unlock it, be able to put it in the rep's workflow, in context, in the CRM, in email, wherever they might be. So that's key, but it's all about that right learning content, right place, right time to
I'm trying to unpack one of the things you said there, because part of it I interpret as like, now the manager has to be maybe where we used to have trainer. Some organizations have a sales training, component, an actual, personnel who are doing that, or what we started to call sales enablement. Does that shift now to the manager for that just in time, or where does that go?
100%. The managers better have some understanding or appreciation of how people learn, how people master, how people forget. There has to be a fundamental understanding of that, at least, because the old school managers just being frustrated. Well, we covered this during the onboarding. It's part of the onboarding and they're not doing it. Yeah, you're right. They're not. So what are we going to do about it? Right. So how are you going to get it so that they can start to actually change those behaviors and create a new habit loop? Once you form a new habit loop on something, it's fine. I'll tell you one from our own company here, MediaFly, which was interesting, is we sell the things we sell is value selling solutions, business value assessments, but for all stages of the sales process. Could even be for marketers. It could be top of funnel, what would a potential business outcome look like, business case look like, which then shows enough people in the buyer group, hey, there's a there, you should have the conversation. And then go through total cost of ownership, of eventually a full-fledged business value assessment. So there are value engineers that do this in companies, but a lot of companies don't have the value engineers. We are one of the companies that doesn't, even though we offer value engineering services, it's hard for us to do it internally because we're so busy helping our clients. So having the reps prepare a value hypothesis is a great example. We've got AI, MCP layer in our solution. So you can have them spit it out, but they weren't doing it. We trained on it. We put a KPI around it. We inspected it during deals. We saw that they just weren't doing it. And when push came to shove, what we uncovered one day, which is fascinating, the CRO and I uncovered, is some of them kind of admitted to us, like, I don't really believe in it. It just looks like a bunch of numbers to me. But what we're able to show is when you did the value hypothesis up front, your win rate was double when you didn't do the value hypothesis up front. So I said, it's about so the personal belief is the thing that's weighing these ups down. So when you go back and you start to peel away those things, you can finally get to a point where say, aha, now that we know that that's that personal belief. But to your point, that's a squishy loading thing, believing versus knowing versus doing, that whole thing. Well, if the managers aren't prepared to understand what that looks like, they're just going to be frustrated. They're just going to miss their number. They're just going to be good.
Yeah, it's right. I mean, it's really interesting to hear you guys talk about even in your own experience and we see a version of this story time and time again. And once again, the manager strikes me as like the key, I don't know, fulcrum of the story, but it's like the CRO and, you and the CRO and whomever else at the executive level are like, we know the answer is here. We know that this is true, this thing, and we just need our salespeople to do it, and we need them to do it, consistently and at a high enough quality. And the loop breaks when that gets pushed down. It goes through enablement or whatever. The reps run into any type of resistance or any type of awkwardness or like not believing it or not trusting it. And then if they don't get kind of corrected in real time or get that feedback from a manager that's puts them back on the right track, well, then it's gone. So like, the CRO in this case was like, here's the framework and here's how we value it. Here's how we measure that ROI. And it just goes to die. And then a quarter later, it's like, why is our win rate so low or whatever? And it's like, oh yeah, we've just been like, we're not even doing that thing. We're doing our thing, and our thing's not working.
And Brian, with AI, it just makes it so easy.
Yeah.
Just because something's easy doesn't mean they're going to do it. You still have to win hearts and minds. You still have to. I remember hearing this. This is like an old reference, but like in Afghanistan, how we were initially, really struggling in Afghanistan, and then we kind of turned the tide. Eventually, we left the country. Right, that's different. But when we turned the tide, I think it was McChrystal. I think was the general at the time, and it was really what it came down to is going village by village and winning hearts and minds of the tribal elders. Once the tribal elders in that village, and how did we do that? Of course, we handed out candy and money, because that's the American way, right? But it was that process of winning hearts and minds, and that's the same sort of thing you have to have go throughout your sales organization if you really want to create that change.
Yeah. I'll leave you with one last question, because I know you've got to go talk to revenue leaders about solving their problems. What is a hypothesis that you believe, and it'd be fascinating if it's something that you think other people don't, but that you think will be significantly different 12 months from now? We talked about what changed. Like, what do you think will be different in either sales process, the management, or the training process, 12 months out?
Yeah, good question. I do actually think there will be less enablement and training headcount. We're going to see that trend continue. So that's obviously going to keep going. And I think we're going to see a world where we're doing a lot more proving it in the sales process, a lot more land and expand types of motions. I think that, like you said before, that the trust is very low, and the companies who have sort of the capital to weather a very high cost of sale with a long sales cycle, they're gonna do better. Or you're gonna see a lot more solutions that are just highly transactional, and they're just so cheap and so simple. It's just like, if the salesmanship is just absolute crap, you still buy it anyway, and either it accomplishes the goal for you or it doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm sort of depressed in this, by the way, but the truth is that the best, the top 10 percenters are going to end up making more money. I mean, I'm keeping an eye on RepView from time to time just to keep a finger on the pulse, and top salespeople at those companies on RepView are making a boatload of money. And if you stop and look at what they're doing differently, they're doing all the classics really, really well, and they're incorporating an AI into their approaches. They can do both.
I think it's probably a great takeaway is how can you be great at the classic skills? I'm going to drastically oversimplify that as, establishing and finding the problem and then creating trust around the problem. And then, on the edges, how do you use AI to be your, outsource your memory, outsource, how do you do connecting? How do you find, like you said, the people who would be great targets and give them personalized outreach or a really smart outreach? That makes a lot of sense to me.
Go read the classics. Go read the classics. Go read spin selling. Go read major account, strategy. Go read Miller Hyman stuff. Go read Challenger sales good, but Challenger customers better. Go back and read the class. I can't believe how few Brian reps know the classics. To me, that would be like going through school and not reading, I don't know, the Odyssey or Catcher in the Rye
yeah.
What are we doing, guys? What the hell are we doing in our profession? We got to level it up.
I know what we're doing. What we've done is we've said, hey, you need to make 50 calls a day. You need to watch this video. You need to click through this deck. And then we just give them a Salesforce license and an engagement tool. And we say, all right, cool. Yeah, good luck. And then they're out. Then our attrition is bad. And we got all these sellers who are, we're failing them. They're failing out of the company. So that part is a bummer. I do think that we could solve a lot of that, but that's great advice. I think the takeaway of the classics and what I agree with you, like the skills that mattered, when those books were coming out in the last 2, 3, 4 decades, like they're all actually somehow more important right now.
Totally more important. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the conversation. Good seeing you.
It was awesome. Where can folks find you? Where's the best place to find your excellent
Steve
videos?
Richard. Yeah, Steve Richard on LinkedIn. Next to the follow, you can connect with me. There's they hide it now. They made me an influencer, which means nothing. That and $10 gets you a cup of coffee. So that means it's harder to connect, but you can connect there or you can follow. But I try to put out a sales tip every day based on things that I'm hearing. And typically speaking, if it's like someone ask me, if I get 2 different questions in the same week, then I'll do a post about it.
Your posts are great. I would highly recommend folks checking out Steve on LinkedIn. Steve, thanks so much for joining Sales Operator Series. I think if you're an operator, you do influence, but you're really actually doing the work too, not just talking about it.
That you have to. If you don't roll up the sleeves and do sales calls, if your enablement person won't get on a sales call, you got a problem.
That's true. All right, man. It's great to see you, and thanks so much for joining us.
Brian, thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you.